Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another issue of the Mentor Podcast designed to help you make more money and make it faster and keep more of it and pay less taxes. And I don't know who I could interview better on that subject today than Liew, our guest here, who's had so much experience in both residential and commercial. It's kind of hard for me to determine what we should talk about today since we have limited time. But I'm going to let Ken tell you who he is and what he's done. And I am sure we're going to figure out some common ground here that applies to our listening audience. So Ken, give me the overall of what's going on in your life and what's how you got here, and then I'll take it from there.
Absolutely. Well, Ron, thank you so much for having me on the show. You probably don't know it, but you were a driver in my residential experience, through a common friend, and I just want to thank you. And I really had to learn in reverse because I started building skyscrapers. But I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm from the metropolitan area, and I wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. I finally got out of college after 6 years, kept going to school, but ultimately learned that it didn't teach me how to make money. I was building, and fortunately I learned how to build skyscrapers in New York City. But at a certain point, I was standing out looking at New York City, and I had a 6-figure debt, and I had just built a 30-story building. And I said, this isn't working. I had twins, and I really got to figure out this real estate thing, So the only thing I knew was how to build at that point. And I kept, staying up at night thinking like, wow, if I can get a $10 million project, I could pay myself a 5% development fee, 8% general conditions to pay for my staff, a 3%, CM fee, and I could build it and put myself in business. And I manifested that dream to come true. And my first project was a $17 million assisted living building where I made $1.6 million. But that all of a sudden opened up this whole can of worms. I didn't really know what I was doing. I got through it. I had a medical company manage that facility, and I was seeing myself going into this assisted living, and I'm like, I want to be in the real estate business, because that first December, 6 people died, and the next thing you know, I was in the red, and that's what we don't want in the real estate business, So fast forward a little bit, after doing that, I went back into skyscrapers in about 2008. I tapped into this residential thing, and I started doing some stick building and building homes. Fast forward a little bit later in life, in 2016, when I had the Modern Wealth Building Formula, which I wrote the book, I wanted to test it for residential. And I was getting ready to write the book, but I didn't know if it worked. So I created a company called Flippin' USA, and we, in 1 year, did 137 deals, fix and flips, wholesaling. And we found the micro distinction that with this syndication approach, was the Modern Wealth Building Formula, I guess you could say, in those terms, using other people's money and other people's experience, worked really well and allowed us to scale a wholesaling and residential business. And that's when I realized that the formula worked across the board for residential and commercial. So that's what I've been kind of doing, Ron. I still got 3 kids. A couple just got married, a couple got engaged, so the second shift's still a little busy.
I understand that clearly, sir. I got a whole bunch of them running around too. Well, I'm gonna go back a minute now.
Sure.
First of all, you said they did 100 flips. Are you talking about wholesale, rehab and retail, or both?
Yeah. So out of the 137 deals, I'd say it was about 100 wholesales. Because when I joined this group, and they did maybe 20 in their first year, we did 100 in that second year, and then 37 fix and flips. One of the philosophies that we had, we didn't want to take our bread and butter away, because we used to have a line out the door, kind of waiting when we got back from the auction, to buy those properties at a good discount rate. So, we did, we couldn't say we cherry picked, but, some of the deals, we created a system in house where the people covering different counties could actually buy into that deal, and provided the company made the wholesale profit, we then made a second profit on the retail side. So I thought it was pretty fascinating. We were able to create like a second stream of revenue where, these guys were tapping into the wholesale business, not really knowing how to scale it, and then take advantage of the fix and flipping also.
Well, so you were wholesaling in your metropolitan area or out of state, or both?
Yeah, and what we had really focused on was New Jersey. There was 17 counties, and we were able to master 8 counties within a locale, because we had a very interesting system. It reminded me of like a little stock market, floor, where we had a big screen, and we would start scraping the sites on Sunday, and everything would light on the board. So we'd scrape all the foreclosures, and for a certain county, do counties, and it would go and compare that against the Zillows and the home snaps and get values, and everything that was under like our certain threshold, 70% would light up in yellow. So I used to have analytical managers evaluating the properties, field reconnaissance team, and everything was live on a Facebook channel right up to auction time, where we would send the bids in to maybe 3, 4, 5 properties. And most of the time we'd come out at least 2 or 3 a week. So it was like game on every day. And that was in 8 counties in New Jersey. And some of my team would go outside, but before I really thought about scaling, I wanted to get New Jersey down, and then, all hell broke loose. Auctions got, COVID hit and all that kind of stuff. Strategies are changing, and it really just gets into how to utilize the data that's out there today,
Yeah. So your main acquisition tool was foreclosure auctions?
Mostly, yes. I would say probably 80% of our acquisitions. And then, we did a lot of, I call it ecosystem merging. We'd have a table at the events, and, we had Flippin' New Jersey, Flippin' USA. So we had the big buzz going on. So, we would do some deals, just outside, Jersey and in the Queens area. New York City, none of this really applies, and this area is one of the toughest. You could do stuff up in Connecticut, but, it's not the best fixing and flipping state, but, people are doing it now. Some of the members of my old team, I kept in touch with. One guy's got 15 deals going on right now. So there's always opportunity, as you know, Ron. You create opportunity out of nothing, so. But
it won't work here, Ken. You know what I tell people when they say that?
Yeah, exactly.
I tell them, well, if you move, it'll start working. Okay. What did you do when COVID hit? Obviously, it shut down your auctions.
Yeah.
So did you just switch gears? And
yeah, what I've been able to be, I'm grateful for is the way that I pivot. When COVID hit, I leaned towards my development experience, and I was just luckily grabbed a $6 million foreclosure of a legal settlement of the former Larson's turkey farm, and I was able to piggyback, sign a CVS lease, and raise money to kind of start paying myself a little development fee, because I lost $25,000 consulting fee a month coming in, because New York City shut down construction. It was pretty bad, so I was pivoting in a sense, like, let me move towards development, picked up a couple sites, used my old theory, because when I did my first deal, I said, if I could sign this deal, I just signed a development agreement myself. I would give myself $27,000 a month, like 4 months out of the box in 1999, So I said, let me just do that formula now. So then I secured 45 acres in North Carolina. I put together like a little city. I'm writing the specifications and the PUD, planned unit development. The town loves us, has all kinds of development, over 100 townhomes, 100 flats, wellness center. I'm doing a medical play, possibly with Duke. We have a hotel, self-storage, flex office, retail, trying to get like Chick-fil-A or some barbecue place down there. Mm-hmm. And that's where I pivoted. And the next thing it led to is, we had a meeting Friday. I was down there. We're talking with the officials about developing downtown Lewisburg, and North Carolina's hot, so, moved a little in that direction, and then, started, building a little enterprise where we started bringing people in to have some deal flow, and just worked it a little bit differently. We're now getting data, from a couple different directions, but.
Okay. Well, you got a book about building wealth. Tell me what that book is about, because of course, that title always intrigues me and should intrigue anybody.
Yeah, it should have been, because, one day I had picked the title and you told me that title stunk. And I love Ron, because, he just tells you how it is. And I'm intimidated by him sometimes, the skyscrapers are not. It probably should have been Modern Wealth Millionaire Formula. But
well, I got to tell you, that title's good. I like that title.
Yeah.
Does it have a subtitle on it, since we're talking about titles here?
It does. And I'll tell you how it came about. It's How to Master Real Estate Investing.
That's good. That's a great cover. Yeah.
And Jack Canfield wrote, I know a billionaire who followed Ken's formula. And, I had a mentor too, Dolph DeRue. And I don't know if you know a lot about me, but I used to weigh 246 pounds. I weighed in at 169 this week. I'm in the best shape of my life at 60. And, I've done a lot of personal development, and how this came about was an acronym that I came up with when I was with my group, and someone came out with the title, but it was based on, the four acronyms that I was thinking about. The M, and Tony Robbins, we all know Tony Robbins, but I'm always like, come on guys, we got to take massive action. And I had done some landmark, worldwide stuff, and I had just finished a wisdom course with my wife, and that was the W, and then the building was for bold leadership, and building, and then the forward thinking, and then somebody said, hey, modern wealth building formula, and the next thing we were off on a little bit of branding. And really what the book is, it's a lot about sports and how I related my success, as being an all-state football player in high school. I played some college ball, so there's a whole pregame warm-up, and you kind of look at where you're at in the lineup. If you're looking at baseball, some people are leadoff hitters, some people are cleanup, some have a little bit more money to work with, but it's really about the pregame warm-up. And, going to the ice cream store and looking at real estate, like, hey, there's 35 flavors, you got to try a bunch of them until you see the ones you like, and then you see where you kind of fare up. And then once you go through that pregame, you dive in, and it talks about systems, because we all know, 94% of businesses fail, like if they don't really have systems, or they're not into improving systems, or they don't want to listen about systems, or they think they know everything about systems. Yeah. Right. And the key is, my system was, hey, how do you find, fund, and facilitate real estate when I first started, and I found this stuff differently at first, because I found it by calling architects and engineers, who led me to a dentist who had a property. Later on in life, I learned you can scrape data and get information. There was all different kinds of finding, but what I realized in finding, in the micro distinction, it's location, 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 but you'll find a lot of deals when you look at presentation. And I talk a little bit about my 5-5-5 system in there, and then funding, how I learned how to, raise millions of dollars privately, and how I've done some securitized funding. So all different aspects, how we went, like I mentioned to you before, getting people to give us certified checks. We used to get them in 500, 1,000, 2,500, 5,000, because you don't want to pay extra for that property when it was 10% of the negotiated price, And so funding was, a wide gamut, where I just figure, let me, start teaching what I know. And then facilitating, I thought facilitating a skyscraper, it's like building an extraordinary life. You got to build a really strong foundation. And if you don't have like a concrete structure and a backbone, you're cooked. You got to get your tough skin on there real quick. That's why the curtain wall's going up. And if you don't put the windows and get the roof on and batten down the hatches, you're not going to be ready for the storm. And then if life goes up and down like an elevator. Now, in high rises, you want to get the elevator working on the inside to get the hoist off the outside. That's a key critical path item. And then you start working on all the mechanical stuff. And that's, taking care of yourself and, really getting unlimited energy. If you want to be in real estate, that's what you got to do. And then you determine how you want to polish the edges and the finishes, and I built projects that were on Millionaires Listing, 1055 Park Avenue, where you could build something market rate, whatever you want to do. You want to go for the multi-million stuff and look all flashy, you can do that too. But, building a skyscraper is like building an extraordinary life. And, I just applied it to some principles and created a couple courses, and then the modern wealth building formula came out. And, now the task is, showing people how to use it so they can make some money.
So what I got out of all of that was, you start by building a good foundation. And we're not talking about skyscrapers here. We're
right,
talking
exactly.
about any kind of project you do in life.
Yes.
Start by building the good foundation.
Yes.
And then you take it one step at a time in the right order.
Yes.
And if you get it out of the wrong order, then the whole thing could cave in on you. And that's so true. I never really thought about running a business like building a skyscraper, but it's all the same.
It is. Yeah. It's funny because one day I never did any business. I'm like, you just built $100 million skyscraper. It had accountants, it had lawyers, architects, engineers, planners, planning board, construction. I'm like, that's a business. That's a big business, and, once you determine, like we all know, my biggest thing, Ron, lately is micro distinctions, right? Like you got guys like you and I, we're at the 95 or 99.34 percentile. It's that, How do we get to 99.5, 99.6, 99.7? Those increments, when you go, you're talking millions of dollars. People that are at 99.9, that's the Bezos, the 10.0, but you know what I'm saying? Not necessarily, but I think when you go from 99.4 to 5, it brings you like up over 400,000 a year. And then when you go to 6, it's like 1.7. So little micro distinctions in your effectiveness is so key to, what I say, having an extraordinary life, and being happy, really.
I think the way I would put that is sometimes a marginal shift can create a massive change.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. And that shift starts with shifting in the thinking, of course.
Yes.
And that's one thing that I teach, Ken. We're not going to change anybody if we can't first change their thinking.
Yes.
And you got to change their thinking about real estate, because most people really don't have a clue. They're full of false misrepresentations and junk that people have fed them, and all the things that are going to go wrong that don't ever go wrong. But I have a harder time trying to change people's thinking about what they're worth.
Yeah.
What they can do, because people come from a background of just making a living for the most part. Don't know anybody that hadn't had some serious failures in the past, and some people just won't let loose of those. They just insist on carrying them forward, and destroys their confidence in themselves. So in my world, I like to change their thinking at least one check at a time. Well, because honestly, you can listen to all the courses, and you can watch all the videos you want and spend your life on YouTube and go to Tony Robbins seminars every other month. And it ain't going to do squat for you if you don't start getting paid.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to get paid. So first step is to do what you can do whatever your situation will allow you to do, and get some money coming in. You described you had the same issue.
Yeah.
I had the same issue. Trust me, there was a time when, I don't know how I was going to get the bills paid, which actually is what got me in this thing to begin with. It was hunger, mostly.
Exactly. I had that same experience.
So
and sleepless nights.
You bet. And a lot of Tums.
Exactly. Yeah. I went to cul-de-sac.
I interview a lot of people on this podcast.
Yeah.
And I don't remember anybody who didn't start from adversity.
Yeah.
And grow strength. And you also mentioned an alligator skin. The only way to get that is to get beat up. People who do what you do get beat up consistently and finally come to the conclusion, well, it didn't kill me, so I'm going to move on. And pretty soon you get to a mindset, you're so tough that what people say doesn't matter anymore, and all the little crap people worry about. I mean, I'm to this, as many people as I've taught, I'm just shocked at how little it takes in some people's life just to destroy their entire ability to move forward. I still don't, to this day, I don't know if it's fear. I know it's got to be partly a lot of fear, but fear of what exactly? Fear of what? Fear of failure? Well, I'd fear failure more than I would anything else, but my goodness, it's just so hard to get people to start moving in the right direction. So you tell me, what do you think is the difference between your mindset back then and a lot of people you run across mindset today?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I hear you say a couple of things, about measuring, right? And people, they devalue themselves, first of all. And they get confused with them being a failure versus them failing a measurement.
Yeah, that's good.
And one of the things that I had to say, like building skyscrapers, it's just a problem. So the what's so of building that, it's just a problem, because, if not, you could lose your mind, and, you could easily go into a rabbit hole. People go into rabbit holes because they think they failed when failure doesn't exist. You've heard the old story about Walt Disney. He failed 456 times before he got his loan. He just never gave up. So failure doesn't exist. You got to change your approach. People don't realize that simplicity sometimes. So they get caught, they get stuck, and they don't have the mindset that, that there's people out there that want to help you. I mean, most people will help you if you ask them to help you, but people don't reach to their resources. I mean, there's never been a shortage in resources, it's the resourcefulness, because that person gets stuck sometimes.
Yeah. And there's never been a shortage of ways to make money.
Yeah, exactly.
Opportunities come from every direction.
Yes.
And I can tell you from my experience, the less you need them, the more they come.
Yes.
The less you're looking for them, the more they arrive.
Mm.
So it all comes down to, I think, first of all, cash flow.
Yes.
You got to have cash flow in your life, because without it, you got stinking thinking, chaos management,
Mm.
and you're always worrying about, paying the bills and so forth, and it won't allow you to free up your mind to move forward. So whatever it is you can do in your life to get the cash flow coming is what you ought to focus on first, and then you can move on to other things.
Yeah.
You didn't start by building high rises.
No.
I know prior to 2008, I had 32 different developments going on in 9 different states. I didn't start by doing that either. I started by doing my first house that I made $3,000 on.
Yes.
So it's the start that we got to get most of our listeners moving. Now we got some very, very good listeners who've been very, very good. And in fact, some of them are probably watching this that are multi-millions of dollars worth of commercial stuff, but they all started with residential and then gravitated to commercial. And
Yeah.
what I tell them to do, get the cash flow coming first, but we don't go from one to the other. There's nothing wrong with doing both simultaneously, like I've pretty much done most of my adult life.
Yeah.
You were going to say something that I interrupted you on.
No, I agree, and I think you probably look at real estate like it's just an investment, so if it meets the criteria and you can make money from it, move forward.
Yeah, but it's a tool to build wealth with. And there's not, I don't know of any other business like it. We got all this huge transactional value checks coming in with this very minimal overhead in any buying and selling house business. So it's kind of hard to beat that. You don't get that if you got a brick and mortar business. Walmart don't have something they sell for 20 grand or 30 grand or 50 grand or whatever. And yet they got this massive overhead. I used to have a restaurant. I tell people it cost me 100 grand a month just to keep it open. And there were plenty of months that I didn't have the 100 grand coming in, so I had to write a check. And for what? Pathetical little amount of money that you can make operating it all a whole year, and all that grief and all that risk compared to what we do in real estate. Geez, one deal, get a great big old check, and we don't have the risk. I've helped my folks remove the risk from the business. So listen, how do I get? How do they get a hold of your book? I assume you got it on Amazon. What do you want to give our listeners today?
It's on Amazon, but I actually, I made arrangements, to give it away for free at the mentorpodcast.com/Ken.
All right, better say that again. The
mentorpodcast.com/Ken.
Okay, don't forget the .com part /Ken. Okay.
We have the mentorpodcast.com/Ken, Ken.
All right, and then they can download the book and read it.
Yes.
Well, that's a nice gift. So let me ask you this. What's the biggest mistake you made in your career so far?
Ooh.
Surprised you with that one, didn't I? You weren't prepared for that.
Yeah. I would say, not, learning earlier in life about mentorship, and, I kind of thought I could do it all myself. And I didn't reach out to people like yourself until I was in my 30s to figure out what's Ron LeGrand doing in the residential business, and one of your very, very successful students was the one that told me about you. And that was in 2008 when we were both struggling, and we met at the Winner's Circle, and that's how it all came about for me. But it really was a mistake, that I didn't learn about it, because I did read, like we all did when I was 18, you might have been a couple years older, How to Buy Real Estate with No Money Down by Robert Allen, but then it went on the shelf, and I listened to my dad. I went to college. I should have kept with what the book said and got into the real estate, but I waited, over 10 years before I did it. And that's really my biggest mistake, So, if you're young, and don't get me wrong, it's never too late to get started, because I have people in my enterprise that are getting started in their 50s and doing deals after a couple months, even older than that. Real estate is not rocket science. It's and just don't try to reinvent the wheel. I guess I could say I waited long and I was trying to reinvent the wheel, and there's people out there like Ron and mentors, like that could help you get there,
Yeah, but you're a man. It's testosterone. It's not your fault, Ken. You know, the last thing we're going to do is follow instructions. That just ain't the way it works.
My wife of 39 years reminded
We
me
can't
yesterday.
help it. We can't help it. And by the way, you mentioned Bob Allen. He actually did the sponsored the first seminar I took back in 1982.
Yeah.
And then the 2-day seminar that I went to that changed everything for me. While most everybody else went back to work, of course, and didn't do anything like you, but you weren't alone. So your biggest mistake was you just would not seek out help because you were a control freak, wanted to do it all yourself.
Yeah, like, and I maybe didn't have enough open mind, because here, and there's a big controversy, but my dad was like, go to college, and I was like, oh, I'm going to go play college football and I'm going to try to become an engineer. I failed calculus 3 times, Ron. If I didn't meet my wife and take a calc 2 for the 3rd time, forget about it. I would have never been here,
Yeah.
and my PE test, I failed 4 times before I passed it. So, and then when I got the engineering license, I was making too much in construction. I never became an engineer. I literally worked for 9 months as an engineer right out of college. Yeah. And I did another site design because I won a site design award when I graduated. And that's what planted the seed to be a developer one day, but that's kind of, if I could do it all over again, those were a couple of changes I would have made,
How did 2008 affect you?
I lost $330 million in one day. I just finished developing 240 Park Avenue. Tom Brady came to see the pool and the penthouse. We bought St. Vincent's Hospital. We bought the toy building and a city block on 6th Avenue with mezzanine loans with Lehman Brothers. And it all disappeared in one day. I went into a funk for several years. I didn't come back till 2012. I went and partnered with a guy who had a CM firm in New York. We built $300 million in skyscrapers. I had a concrete business, was dealing with all the gangsters. That's why I tell people I created an enterprise. It's like the Cosa Nostra of real estate. Once you get in, you can't get out. And, and then I got out of that. I didn't want to work like that anymore. And that's when we did the Flipping USA thing. Then we wrote the book, and then we created Global Real Estate Strategies. And here we are today.
So 08 was pretty tough on you, huh?
Oh, yeah, I almost checked out. I was like, now what am I going to do? I'm done. I tried to buy Stewart's root beer, and, that didn't work.
Well, you probably already know I have a very similar situation.
Yeah, no, I remember. We shared the war story.
I have no idea what it cost me, and I'll never will know, but
yeah,
I know I don't want to do it again.
Yeah.
And I do know that we had some tough times right after that as a company. And as a person, because I lost 80% of my personal revenue in one day. As soon as Lehman went down, people that weren't in the world we're in, weren't out there doing real estate business, have no idea what happened in September of 2008, and probably never will, because it didn't affect them so much personally. Boy, it sure affected us. I had 32 developments going simultaneously.
I believe it.
Yeah. And guess what happened to all 32 of them?
Yeah, I can imagine. I lost everything.
Yeah.
I was able to get something out of it afloat, but I was at the top of the world and then at the bottom the next day, and it was like a slow death because Bear Stearns collapsed like the week before. And then Lehman went down. I had just finished literally 5 years before that, or I forget exactly, did the Bear Stearns headquarters in Brooklyn Union Gas. In Metro Tech in Brooklyn, and when I heard that, you'll remember this. If I say it to other people, you remember when Orson Welles came on the news, like in the, 30s or 40s, everybody thought the world was coming to an end. I thought the world was coming to an end. It was crazy.
Well, you weren't alone, because, when all around the world, money just dried up instantly. Yeah. More importantly, the exit strategies all dried up. There was no buyers anymore because of the money situation, and it changed everything to this very day. Anyway, enough of that. I'm getting depressed. I don't know about you.
Yeah, we don't want to go there. Onward and upward. There you go, buddy.
Yeah. Somehow we got through it.
Podcast.com/Ken.
Yeah. And we're still here kicking. I know at least one developer here in Jacksonville, his exit strategy was a bullet in his brain. Imagine you probably know people like that as well. So,
a guy, and the bad news was he had 9 billion, he went to 2 billion and he took his life. That's
out of here.
Yeah, something like that. It was like crazy. But there was people jumping off buildings, and New York was, it was like the towers coming down again. It was a bit chaotic,
Yeah. All right. Well, now we've educated the public on that. Let's get an address for your book one more time because we're about to end this. thementorpodcast.com/Ken. And if you're watching this and you don't know what I do, I teach people how to buy and sell houses in beautiful neighborhoods in great condition, not junk and war zones, using terms so we can sell them on terms. We don't have to use banks. We don't use our money. We don't use our credit. And we can build cash flow and wealth simultaneously in the world of single family houses. And as I've said many times, we also teach commercial, but we got to get that cash flow fixed. And then we can go off. Now, when I would teach commercial, it doesn't require you going down a bank and getting big loans and using your credit. In fact, one of the things I caution people against is using their own credit. I think it's the biggest mistake they can make, period. And I can prove that, by the way, with my own experiences post 2008. So go to thementorpodcast.com/terms, and you'll see a little over an hour training on how we do what we do, and all over America with thousands of students doing the same. ronlegrand.com/terms. Ken, it's been a pleasure, sir. Do you have one last word of advice you want to leave with our listeners?
Yeah, if you don't have one, kick in your morning routine and time block every day for what you want to achieve in life, and you'll get everything you want.
Okay. So in other words, don't let other people control your time. Maintain the control of your time yourself.
Exactly. I'm big on blocking time where, I just, I go into deep work and no distractions. I think one of the biggest things out there is all the social media. Everybody's getting distracted all the time, and you have to block your time to go into deep work,
Yeah.
That's what
and you have to guard against people that will gladly take it away from you and could care less whether they should or not. And I teach a whole seminar on that. So let's don't get into that right now, but you're absolutely correct.
Yes.
Ye who doesn't manage his time is not managing his life either. And chaos will take over, and minutia will destroy your ability to create anything worthwhile.
Yes.
All right, sir. Been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you for sharing with us today.
Yes, sir. See you in a few weeks.
The next mastermind meeting, which you and I share.
Yes.
All right.